Okay, we're going. Welcome back to Movie Whale movie marathon thing. I always forget what the
Yeah.
hell it is as soon as we start recording. I'm Andrew.
Movie whale.
Anyway, it's the Movie Whale marathon series thing that we're doing, and we're still in Planet of the Apes, and we're on the third one, Escape from Planet of the Apes, released I believe in
Mhm.
1972, early
I
1970s.
think it said one on Amazon
71?
Prime. That's what I have
71.
written down.
71. 1971. I was only
Could
a
be
year
wrong.
off. Yes, the follow up to Beneath Planet of the Apes. And as usual, as this is your first time watching it, I would like to hear your initial thoughts. I want to briefly summarize for people who don't know. At the end, technically chronologically, of the last film, our favorite apes, Cornelius and Zira, and a new ape, Dr. Milo, using the recovered rocket from the first movie that Colonel Taylor crashed into a pond. We'll come back to that because we need to. They flew away from the planet as it was blowing up. They went through the same weird time vortex, and they came back a couple of years after Taylor and was it Brent? I can't remember his name.
Yeah.
Something.
Brent. Mhm.
Taylor knockoff. A couple of years after they left, they wind up in 1971 to the surprise and shock of humans, and there's many
Yeah.
shenanigans and philosophical timeline quantum
I get questions about the time travel, but I'm guessing it's not important.
contemplations that occur during this movie.
hmm
Also, twist: Zira's pregnant. What? Cool. All right. Thoughts. Go.
Okay. The very first thing that I noticed was the tone change. Because we've even the first one was pretty serious. Like there
Yeah.
was some levity to it in the sense that it was kind of an action adventure film, but for the most part, it was like this heavy argument about morality and how we take care of the earth and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then the second one was that on
Yeah.
steroids, which made it weird.
Yeah.
And this one is like the moment they take off their helmet and the music just kind of like
It's just a
the
movie from
music
the
makes a
70s.
joke. Like
It's a
it's just a
yep.
comedy for a
Yep.
large
Yep.
portion of the film.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Um,
Yep. What if Cornelius wore
and
suits? Let's watch Zira
yeah,
try on dresses.
uh-huh,
Yeah. I
uh-huh.
actually I have a
And
couple of things to say about that as well, so you keep going.
but like the characters fit that pretty well, actually. I When I first heard the tone, like when I noticed the tone shift, I was like, that's a weird move. I'm not sure how I feel about it. But as we went on with the film, I felt like it worked pretty well. I think it balanced out like the fact that we ended the last film on such a dour note,
I
like it was
know.
terrible.
Yeah.
Um and this one is like, okay, it happened. Let's escape from that a little bit. Let's lighten it up a little
Literally,
bit
let's
while
escape.
still I made the pun intentionally.
Okay, I was just
Um,
checking.
um, but they still have like they're still smart enough, intelligent enough to weave in the problems early on and let them grow kind of organically and naturally in the plot. I
Mhm.
like that it doesn't start right away as super militaristic. I mean, they definitely take custody of the chimps,
Right.
right? But they are they're not handcuffed. They're not like they are put in a cage when they reach their destination, but they're just sort of like softly guided to that
Right.
destination.
But it's also like, what else would
Um,
you do in that time, especially with
yeah.
chimpanzees? Like, what else are you gonna
Mhm.
do? Like, so yeah,
Mhm.
it's not like other movies where the benevolent alien comes down and they immediately throw it in a jail cell and ration its oxygen or something. Like in this particular
Right.
instance and tone, it does make sense. So
And they're
yeah,
not even talking yet. Like
I
they haven't
know.
even
Yeah.
really shown sentience. I mean, they clearly showed up in a spaceship with spacesuits on, so like there's something going on. But
Hmm.
that like somebody could have put them in that stuff, right? And then
Right.
they sit down and they eat oranges with a fork and a knife.
Uh
And I
huh.
go, who does that?
Right. Who in general humans? Who does that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, um overall I thought it was pretty good. It does take a turn towards the more normal
I.
serious Planet of the Apes
Uh
thing at the end
huh.
of the film, and
Yeah.
I felt like they did that all really naturally. Like the fact that the first half of the film and the second half of the film don't feel like the same film, I think for the most part works pretty well. There are some things in the overlap that are a little awkward, and I feel like the end of it is maybe a little rushed, but
Hmm.
altogether, like I see how it evolves. It's kind of like ET, like how it goes from this being kind of little fun interaction to fear to lockdown to we can't stand this anymore to full on death at the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
So I
See,
don't have any major complaints about the structure at all.
I have not major, but I have more. I would not say it's
Okay.
as even a split. I think it's more like Swiss cheese. I don't think. So for one, I don't like the tone changes. I think they
okay.
should have. I think they should have done one or the other. I don't think the mixing is done well. I don't think it's as seamless as it maybe could have been. I do think there is a point where it just stays serious. It's from when Cornelius flips the tray. It's consistently dark.
Yes.
After that, it feels more like a Planet of the Apes movie. But before that, it is back and forth whiplash kind of stuff. I do not think it's consistent. And I think what
You don't think the fact that they're cracking jokes in their first hearing
that's what I
the
mean.
Combination of the two?
No, that's what I mean. I don't. I don't like that it's a combo. And I think the hearing scene, which I'll get to eventually, because there's a couple of earlier notes I have. I think that the hearing scene is like the most out of character that the apes ever get, which I'll come back to. It's just. It's like, yes, it's jokes and it's funny and it's silly, but it's not just funny and silly that they're cutting oranges and it's contrast. It's Cornelius in suits and Zira in dresses and them making jokes at the hearing and I like her doing the tests really quickly. It's like all intelligent, but then it's also the world's been destroyed. They're escaping their home.
Yeah. Okay, good
Milo
point.
is killed immediately. Hate that.
Yeah.
Made a note of that. I'll come back to
He's
that.
a red shirt. I noted, Milo was a red shirt.
I was so upset about that. I'm upset about that every single time. And then the villain, I can't remember his name, but the science advisor.
He's Hassel something.
Yeah, he's way too heavy
Hassling.
for the light scenes to feel consistently light.
He comes on really strong from the get-go.
I honestly,
which makes him sort of a cartoonish villain, which works a little bit with the tone, in my opinion, but then it turns really heavy really fast.
I think he's a really good foil for Dr. Zaius if they just allowed this movie to be consistently heavy and not lighthearted and silly. Because we get too much into the silly fun of it. I think the world itself embraces the talking apes too quickly. And I'll come back to that. So I wanted to read off a couple of my notes. First of all, I always thought this was funny. Quote, "Welcome, gentlemen, to the United States." And we cut off because they take off the helmets. What are you doing? Who do you think you're talking to? You know whose rocket that is. It's yours. And if you if you think it's Taylor or Brent or whatever his name is, they've been to the United States. If they aren't Taylor or Brent, they're, I don't know, Russians, you wouldn't be happy about it. If they're not humans and they're aliens, why are you surprised when they're apes? Like, what were you expecting? I don't know, that's a nitpick. Then I also have, who made the spacesuits? Because we never see...
No, okay, there are some serious plot issues.
A little bit.
There's no way that they fixed the spaceship and got out in space before the bomb went off because they didn't know the bomb was going to go off.
That, for one, and also for the timeline to work, that means like Dr. Milo had to have found it immediately. Dr. Milo was out there and had to have done that right after Taylor landed because... Brent comes. If his name's not Brent, I've already screwed up. His name's is it Brent? Okay. If
it's Brent like Brent with a B in front.
Brent, good. If Brent showed up, let's say 6 months after Taylor, the events of 2 end like a week at most after he shows up.
Not very far.
Like at most. So yeah, like maybe there are spacesuits on the ship. I'll give you that, but we don't see them. No one ever wears them. Why did the apes know they had to wear them? Whatever. I thought it was weird that they put the guy in the gorilla suit in this massive gorilla suit. The gorillas in the previous films look more like gorillas than this
it was
mascot.
It was pretty jarring.
It was weird that they chose to do that. And then so this first part of the movie, before it gets too silly, I do really, really like this concept of Zira and Cornelius and Milo having to like not talk. They're in Taylor's situation. We're gonna meet some human scientists. I find all of that intriguing. I love that. It's Star Trek Into Darkness before Star Trek Into Darkness.
The fact that they set up the parallels with Branton and Lewis, the doctors, but then the fact that Branton is just decorative for the entire film does bother me.
Yes, absolutely, agree. But this whole thing, this whole situation, all the testing and the caging and the conflict, I think Zira is incredibly out of character. To go from the person advocating and begging Taylor and Brent to never speak around any apes because of what they could do to them, for her to then have to be convinced multiple times to shut the fuck up because they don't know what kind of situation they're in. And for her, like, they try to use an aspect of her character, the desire for truth. And, like, that technically is accurate. But for her to go into this completely ridiculous, unknown alien world and to just start talking and to be so brazen about it, you're putting everyone at risk. You, Milo, and Cornelius. And before we even know it, you already know it, you're putting your baby at risk. And that, like, if they just didn't talk, if they had stuck to what Milo said, the whole film would have gone differently, very likely. And then... the reveal of her talking is hilarious, fantastic, and I like that it's not like it's not a parallel to Taylor's moment. It's more shocking. It's more like it's shocking in a different way, and it is really fun. But Cornelius and Milo's reaction, I think, is fantastic. And then that conflict, the conversation between those three, I love it. And then they kill Milo immediately. Again, whips, crack.
You don't need to learn Milo's name until like 5 minutes before he dies.
I know! I hate that so much. I'm like, oh yes, cool. Another ape character, another smart ape character. Let's do it. Let's ride this train. I can't wait. And they fucking killed him off, and I've always hated that. You didn't have to do that. You didn't have to do that. It
feels weird to have him, because I don't feel like he really serves any purpose.
The only purpose he serves is that he built the rocket. You couldn't just say Cornelius built the rocket, because it wouldn't have made sense. And Zira couldn't have made the rocket, and that wouldn't have made sense. But, like, why did you have to kill him off? Why couldn't you do the movie with 3, and then maybe kill him at the end later, or halfway through? I hate that they kill Milo. I just hate it. And then,
it feels weird, because they're trying to up the stakes, but then they don't do anything with the upped stakes.
No, they don't. They just don't. And, like, it's kind of a plot point, kind of not. I just don't like it. I like then when the doctors come back and they talk, and it's nice and all that, but again, it feels like kind of quick tone shifting, where they're immediately trusting of him. And I don't hate that. He seems like an okay guy, but also they only had one interaction. And when Cornelius says, I have from the beginning, it's like, that's a very Cornelius thing to say, and you have a very reassuring voice, and I am with you, Cornelius, but I'm not 10 anymore, and when I think about this, that doesn't make any sense at all. You've met this man once. One time. This is not good. This is not healthy. This is not safe. I will say, though, I do like the little bit of Cornelius development we've had, where during the testing and Zira's being cheeky, he's not stressed anymore. He's just like, yep, that's my wife. Because, like, Milo looks pissed, and Cornelius is just shaking his head and grinning. He's like, that's Zira. She's always being silly. Oh my goodness, I married her. Like, that's nice. I like that little bit of development. But then, so after that, we go back into kind of an interesting, serious moment where they're going to reveal this to the world. And the big...
I don't know why they invited press to the conference. That's my first question.
I am curious about that. I think I wrote that down. No, I don't think I did. But it said...
it's just...
Oh, no, I did write it down. We cannot withhold this secret from the world. Bullshit, you can't. Like, what do you mean? There's no way you would reveal that. You'd keep that secret as long as you could. It's not like there were any
cameras when they brought them in.
Know. Like, no one knew, dude.
Maybe that one zookeeper, but that's it.
That's it. And you know, being in the American government, you just and then done. And, like, it's not even there. Don't even worry about it. I just found that kind of weird. And then, so the court moment when Cornelius says, "Only when she lets me." Of course, that's hilarious. That is so funny and lighthearted and fun and silly. But I just feel like there's weight that moment could have had that we chose to ignore. And
Agreed.
the Zira moment, while not lighthearted and funny, still has weight. You can kind of be shocked because it's like the first line she says. Not really. They talk a little bit before that. Like there's weight to it. When Cornelius does it, it's not just that tonally it's funny. It's that he is being funny. He is being cheeky. He is in, whether he knows it or not, and he should know it, because again, we've already seen this scene in Planet of the Apes, and when this happened, it was ridiculously heavy, because the fate of Taylor was being decided. Now they're in that position, they know the weight, and they're being funny. This isn't Hunger Games, where their mentor told them to win the hearts and minds of the capital by being charming. That was not laid out. That was not something that was discussed, and I don't think it would have been. So it's just, and then the whole court scene now for me is cringe-inducing. Not because it's bad or poorly written, it's because clearly Cornelius is doing everything he can to be vague while also tripping over his own words several times, while Zira's just like, What are you talking about? This is the truth. We came from your future where your world was destroyed and humans were animals, basically. And like, you didn't lay out what you were gonna talk about or reveal beforehand? That's insane.
I'm not crazy. Yeah, I'm not crazy about this renegade Zira that they like really play in this film. I think you can have her be like herself, you know, kind of like obstinate, show off maybe a little bit sometimes, you know, blunt because she likes the truth. You can have her be all those things and still have her as an intelligent character, which she is, at least in this first film. We don't get a lot of her in the second one. And I feel like they just they need her to be bigger, so they push her past what is common sense. I mean, I think the dissection slip makes perfect sense because she's a scientist and she would say that word all the time.
Right, totally fair. And her catching herself is one thing. But then it lays out, though, that she is being aware. The fact that she was so willing
to talk about humans in such a negative light to humans' faces, knowing how it played out for Taylor in the other direction, that makes less sense for her character.
Right. And we are simultaneously having them reveal some things and then holding back on other things that just don't make sense. Where they're like, we've only known 2 humans that have ever been able to speak. Isn't that crazy? He's like, did you ever meet Colonel Taylor? No? Who? What? Yeah. Who was that? Is he a soldier?
Understandably, you don't want to be connected with Taylor's death because that would put you in a bad light.
Right.
But you don't want to be connected with the destruction of Earth either.
Right. Well, also, don't mention that you know any human. Like, the math you could do so quickly that they don't do enough of. They imply it later when they interrogate Zira. But, like, if you don't want them to know that you knew Taylor, don't reference that you have met talking humans at all. At all, man. At all. And it's just, I feel like if you wanted to have some sort of ape reveal that the world was destroyed and there's a time travel thing and to kick off the antagonist, then have them go back with Lucius, the nephew, the young guy. Have him say the stupid shit. And have Zira not be the idiot who keeps, like, there's no reason for her to say, of course I know where we came from. We came from your future. Why would you say that? There's no reason to reveal that. Especially if you're aware of all the intricacies and delicacies of all these other things you don't want to reveal. I just don't think it makes sense. Because no one points it out, but in that moment where she says that, that means that Cornelius was straight up lying to them. And no one flags that they are being specifically, deliberately deceitful in that moment. And it's just like, the scene could have been so crazy and impactful to have him talking and revealing certain things and talking about their culture versus the human culture and humans reacting to it. But it's also, they couldn't resist very believable and fun examples to be funny, where she says my lawfully wedded spouse and the priest stands up, wedded? It's like, we'll deal with that later. It's genuinely funny. It's genuinely entertaining. I love this movie, but it is infuriating in some places because
Sure.
These characters who are our main characters, who are already established characters, they are not acting within the realms of the intellect that they have reflected. And it's very frustrating because if anything, like the most serious situation they've been of has been this one.
I did kind of feel like, at least the beginning, I think Zira gets a little bit of a pass because she's used to working with humans as animals. So she's probably underestimating them as she's encountering them. But that doesn't make sense for her to keep doing that, especially knowing how Taylor interacted with her world. Like, it makes sense that to me that she would show off with the tests. It does not make sense to me that she would break her silence just to make a joke during the test or to point out something about the test, right? Like, she's like, you assume that I like bananas because I'm a monkey, but I'm not gonna do that. And so like there's humor in it and there's sort of like an indignation and like I have a personality in that line. So that line does a lot for her character. The problem is it's not consistent with common sense, or at least what she agreed to do with the rest of her people or her group. So it automatically creates like this brashness in Zira that, sure, she's a bold forward character. She likes the truth, but she's very direct and she acts like she has all the power in the world when she clearly doesn't. And that's, I think, is the core issue. And she's like, she's not afraid of anything in this world, but she should be.
She really should be, yes.
Uh-huh.
And I made a note there because I think when you nitpick, like the tone goes back and forth, but I wrote, only when she lets me, great moment, but that's where it changes. That's where it, I feel, really shifts into being a cartoon there for a bit. But like at the same time, we now have the villain kicked off, and the villain is like maybe the most driven and awful villain of the movies we've had so far. And I also think it's interesting. And then let me see, what do I have here? Yep, I wrote that down. Also, I did write down when they're going through all of the new amenities and stuff of the modern day, quote unquote, and Cornelius asks Zira what the bath is like, and she's like, soothing but very wet, as if she's never been in a tub.
I know.
I don't believe that you exist in a society with lobotomizations and enough water pressure for hoses in your zoo, but you don't have bathtubs. I'm not buying
It's
that.
a little odd. My assumption was that they never developed the need to bathe because of the way that their fur covers their body. Like animals with fur don't bathe. But it is kind of odd that she would never have experienced a bath before.
Yeah, but see, I mean, if you flip it though, and in the other world where it's apes watching Planet of the Men show, they'd say the same thing about humans, because humans are the animals, right? Like, yeah, of course they don't bathe. They don't have the need to, but like...
There are animals that bathe, but not animals with fur.
I think there might be a certain amount of sentience and desire to smell good when you're several thousand years into your sentient development.
Sure.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Like in the upcoming movies we'll watch, where they're like 10 years into being smart apes and they aren't bathing, I'm totally okay with that. I find that very believable. Sure. When you've got libraries and churches and clothes. You know?
It's also worth mentioning we get our timeline in this movie about like how long it takes to become the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
And then
hold on to that.
It doesn't stick around for very long, but yeah.
We're going to reference that in the next movie. We will hold on to that.
It's like hundreds of years, like a minimum of 500 years.
That is something. That is another part that I really do like, even though it does contradict what it was kind of said in the last two films as far as how much Cornelius knew, how much Cornelius was allowed to know. But him telling the story of how apes rose with the extinction of dogs and cats, humans picking primates as pets and then slaves, and then the one ape that said no. Like, I just think that's really cool. Love that story. It's kind of chill. I want to talk about this for a second. I'm curious about your opinion, and I know I've been talking a lot, so I'm sorry, so I'll stop after this. I find it intriguing that the villain is the only villain. In that, for one, I think it is funny that, again, he's the science advisor, and he's the guy who's scared shitless, and so he just wants to kill them immediately. But no one else does. Like, the conversations he has with the
even
president.
The president has a very interesting conversation with him.
No, I love that scene because he's like giving good points and arguing, like, how do you know that what you're going to do won't kick off the future? You're going to punish them for something they haven't done? And, like, the arguments this dude gives are not just politically driven, like, they were fair. And I was like, it's really weird to see a movie where the authority figures are, like, sensible.
Oh, I know. And, like, it wasn't even like they made him into a hero character, like they have a tendency to do. It wasn't like he was purely motivated by goodwill. It was just, he was like, I'm not sure what you're saying makes sense.
Yeah, like, you're off the hinges, dude. Like, you need to reel it back.
You're really aggressive here. And I gotta be honest, the people like these guys. I kind of like these guys. There's no problem with them. Let's just let them live their life, you know? And that one line, I love. I don't want to say I love this villain, but this villain delivers an awesome line when they're talking about the kid and whether or not they're going to let them keep the kid. And the doctor is like, no, absolutely not. We're going to kill them and kill the parents. Get them out of here. And the president makes the Herod reference. He's like, that's what Herod did, man. And he says, Mr. President, Herod lacked our facilities. Like, he has no problem being the guy who kills the innocent baby. He just wants to be the one that does it right. And that is messed up.
Yeah. He's a real shitbird is what he is.
Oh my gosh. And also, the fact that he, like, got her drunk knowing she's pregnant.
I know. That was such a funny... I wrote that down. Mind if I smoke? No, but it's cool to get you drunk.
Exactly!
Yeah. Don't want to hurt that baby, but, you know, it's fine to drink alcohol. That's totally okay. Don't even worry about it. I do really like how at first he's thwarted at every turn. Like, he gets her to admit that she experiments on humans and dissects them. And they have Lewis in the beginning say, you know, we do that to animals, so it's probably not that big a deal. And then the commission itself, the people they wanted to avoid telling that to her, like, I mean, come on, guys. It's what we do right now. Like, it's not entirely unfair, especially if we're the animals.
Their official statement is, like, Dr. Zira has done what a doctor does, and we're not going to take offense at that because that's what we do today.
The number of human characters in this movie who are like, hey, if that's where time goes and that's what happens because we screwed up, oh well, man, what you gonna do? But the guy, this is where I get a little more, again, this is not the best film in the world. The only guy who could explain to them time and timelines and how they can change, he's the dude that goes full crazy person and feels he has to kill them now after already being told the events of things. If I were the dude, let's just theorize for a second, and I'm told the thing that kicks off this issue is the thing that kills cats and dogs, I'd be like, okay, let's start working on medicines for cat and dog illnesses. Sure. That would be my first thought, not to kill these apes, because, sorry, I'm not really into the Adam and Eve story. I don't think these two fuckers could repopulate the planet. I'm sorry, like, even if you do all of chimpanzees, that's not gonna do anything to the other species of ape. Them existing is not the thing that's gonna kick it off. Granted, we're not into the next movie yet, but it's just, when you think about it from, like, timelines and changing things, and, like, dude, also, if you know this much about time, and we're in the 70s, you've seen some Star Trek, you know that as soon as they're back here already, the timeline's already changed. You're already in a different timeline, and you, my friend, are just...
like a guy who would watch Star Trek. I don't think
he's science advisor. You would hope. But I don't know.
This man takes himself way too seriously to watch any Trek.
You're probably right. I find him, he's very much, almost all the pieces are there. Kind of like what we say every now and then with movies. I think he's very clearly meant to be a foil for Zaius. but I don't think he's enough. Zaius was the science administrator, keeper of the faith. He was a dude in his faith who found ways to compound the two to convince the masses. This dude is supposedly a scientist and scientist advisor who kind of keeps talking about fate and God and God's role in things, but also science and quantum mechanics. I think it would have suited the film more to illustrate him as being more of an extremist like Zaius, and a science advisor in an American cabinet who's more religious than scientific wouldn't be unbelievable. Sorry, not sorry. And I think it could have worked a little bit better, because he just seems to walk the line too much.
Well, I feel like you keep saying that he's a foil for Zaius, and I think you're right. I just totally missed it because he has a completely different vibe than Zaius did. I mean, obviously he's filling that role, right? The one who absolutely cannot stand the fact that there is something new in the world, thinks it's a danger to his people, all that stuff. Zaius, I felt like it came from a place of genuine care. He was a little aggressive,
right.
You know, but he genuinely believed what he was doing was right.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, I think, does too, but it comes from a place of
it's more malicious. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
He shoots the baby 4 times.
Per se, he is trying to keep things the same.
Yeah.
And in like in a bad way, because as I'm saying it, it's the same thing, but like it feels different. It feels much more aggressive. It like, you know, he's trying to take out a family. Maybe that's the difference. Like there's
part of it, I think.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on with him.
There's a subtlety to Zaius. There's a gaslighting to Zaius, and there is more of a plot. This guy is just on a one-man mission, and he's not thinking it through. It would have been kind of cool if he was an overarching villain who pops up in other movies, plotting in the background the whole time to take them out and like watch as this develops. But no, it's like he acts as if if you don't kill them right now, this second, within 24 hours, then the world will be destroyed in 2,000 years. And I just it's a little weird. It's a little much. And I find him to be I mean, he does well. Like, it's a villain you wanna smack. But
sure.
I think we talked about him enough.
Just a quick like transition note, actually. His ability to create the situation that he wants, even though no one agrees with him, is a really interesting thing. 'Cause I don't disbelieve it. I think with the position that he has and the intelligence that the character has, he can get it done. And I believe the actions that he takes would lead to the consequences that he kind of like orchestrates. But that kind of gets us to like the committee and how the committee is swayed. At first they're like, I guess we're just going to let the apes live their life. That's fine. It's weird, but it's fine. And then they find out that she's pregnant and that there are other things going on, and that man, and like they don't even really learn that man is going to die, but they just sort of like get that piled on with a couple other things. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we didn't really think this through. We should probably make it impossible for them to reproduce, and let's not let the thing that's currently being born, growing, let's not let that live either.
Also, why couldn't you just let it be born and also, I mean, I'm not advocating for this, but why couldn't you let it be born and then also prevent it from reproducing?
That was my thought as well. They're immediately going to like abort the kid or kill the kid, and like depending on when that happens.
Again, America. That's not very America of you. Very inconsistent, if I do say so myself. Anyway, again, I think
that's where I think the tone shift changes. I mean, it's still a little lighthearted at times, but I think the moment they're like, we're coming for the kid is when they're like, okay, we're on different sides now, because we're not going to let that happen.
Well, it gets heavier again towards the end, but where I think it shifts back into feeling like a better movie, because like the first two films have a constant directive of either survive, get to this place, get to that place. For a big chunk of this film, we're not going anywhere. Zira and Cornelius are just kind of
Mhm.
in a spot, which is like fair, but again, you're not giving us anything. As soon as he flips that tray, we're back in survival mode. We're in escape mode.
Yeah.
We're in figure it out mode. And that's where it again starts to feel like there's momentum. And that moment as well, I always find so like heartache because you understand Cornelius in the moment. His reaction to finding out that he killed the guy, it seemed so like heartbreaking because he didn't mean to do it.
Mhm.
But his
Mhm.
moment with, I can't remember the lady's name, the doctor lady, even though I've seen this movie many times.
Branton.
Branton?
Stevie.
Stevie.
Branton.
Stevie, yeah. When he tells Stevie, like, I didn't mean to kill him, I was just angry, I hate him, I'm so sorry, please believe me. She's like, yeah, I believe you. But then when he tells the other doctor, he's like, hey, I had nothing to do with that boy's death. That's not true, Cornelius. That's not accurate. The first time you said it was better. That's not right.
Mhm.
But anyway, now we're around the time where we get to the circus, and who's there to help us but Khan? And I love it. He's great in this movie. I love him.
Oh, it's amazing.
Armando.
Is his name.
Armando.
And he's so proud of his little circus. And
Yes.
he's introduced. He's like immediately one of those more endearing characters that doesn't necessarily hold a film together, but you just love this little character.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, his line, I wrote it down because I like it so much. It's like, and if it is man's destiny one day to be dominated, then oh please God, let him be dominated by such as you.
I love
Like,
that. And again, it's this weird population of like cool with destiny and time and the outcomes of actions. Every other character except for this crazy science advisor who's just like, no. Like it's just he's the every racist in an X-Men movie. Like, you know that humanity going extinct doesn't mean that like you die, right? Like it doesn't affect
you're gonna die long before.
Like, yeah, like you'll be fine, right? You know that, right? Like you can still go to work and get coffee and watch movies and shit. Whatever. No, all right, fine, whatever. But no, his character is great. I love it, and it's just so sweet.
Yeah.
The first chimpanzee born in a circus. Like, so good. And then we have our Eloise chimpanzee mother, which cool. Interesting things. I have things to talk about. We're kind of towards the end here. I think we should kind of get to the end so we can talk about that.
Honestly,
I want to talk about that.
There's not much else to talk about except the end.
Yeah,
so we can do that.
Yeah, I was heartbroken when I saw this for the first time as a kid because I love Cornelius and I love Zira, and like this, it's not as tragic technically as the last two, but it feels worse to lose Zira and Cornelius in such a way, and the baby. I do love though because I always forget if that little weasel gets away or not. I always forget that Cornelius gets to take him out, and I do like that. But then again. Going back to the point we keep making about the sensible human characters, the cops start shooting at Cornelius. And it's not one of the doctors that yells no, it's one of the other cops, which is just crazy that they didn't go there with the intent to kill them. And someone just got too carried away and trigger happy, like which again just makes the situation worse because there was a positive outcome here. There was help. The cavalry had arrived. They were gonna be okay if it weren't for that fucker. But yeah, okay, so they're all dead, and I hate it, and it's sad, and Zira crawls over to Cornelius's body, and like he watched the dummy fall, and like he hits his legs, and like it hurts. They don't hold back. But anyway, big twist at the end.
Die badly.
It was rough, and I kind of hate it. I kind of wish they wouldn't have done it. I kind of wish they would have allowed Milo to stick around for the whole movie and kill him off, and then make that sad, and then allow Cornelius and Zira to be in another. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too
I felt
attached.
like it was in line with what these movies generally do, which is not spare you.
I guess, but it's still. These movies are really, really bad or good, I guess, depending on your perspective, at taking these characters we've spent a movie or more getting really attached to and giving them the most, not climactic, not fulfilling, not even overly dramatic, just painful, blunt deaths,
Mhm.
and they
Mhm.
hurt every
They
time.
do.
We lost Taylor and Brent and Nova back to back to back in ridiculously unsatisfying ways. We lose Zira and Cornelius and new Milo, kind of, in the most
Mhm.
painful, abrupt, unsatisfying ways. These are also this is back in the day, and I read this. This was in a time where consecutive sequels wasn't really a thing.
Oh
So
wow.
like this is like every time this ends is like, yep, that's it. Deal with it.
And they're just gonna leave you there.
Yes! And it's like,
Oh, that's
oh
terrible.
god. But anyway, twist Zira switch the babies, which I think contradicts the point I just made, because why would you do that if you didn't know there was going to be a sequel? Also,
Yeah.
Zira, why
Well,
would
and
you
I
do
don't
that?
feel like it's that much of a twist, if I'm being honest. I think the moment that they introduced that there's another chimp baby, I was like, hmm.
Mm.
And then there was the St. Francis amulet, which is the easiest way to identify one versus the other. And
Mhm.
then she goes into the cage to say goodbye. And I was
Right.
like, all right, they're swapping the babies.
I didn't
But
catch it as a
it
kid.
was okay. Well, you were a kid. I'm watching this and
As
I
an
am
adult.
paying attention. And as
Yeah.
an
And he
adult, I'm like,
Armando says it. I just wasn't paying attention. Like he outright
mm-hmm,
says as much. But
mm-hmm.
I thought that the influence was just enough to have the baby like learn to talk, which is really stupid looking back. But it's like, why would you switch the
You
babies?
said smart like your mama, and
I
you
know,
were like,
okay? I know.
that's Eloise's kid.
I know. I know, okay? I know. But why would you switch the kids unless you knew you were gonna die?
Well, I think they kind of did. Like Cornelius asks for a gun because he's going to commit suicide before they
If,
experiment
yeah,
on
if
them.
need be. But like,
Uh-huh.
I see that's where I think again it gets kind of twisted because the president and the commission have already said explicitly, do not kill them. The
Mhm.
one guy we know is on a crazy murder mission. But when Cornelius says to the two scientists, Lewis and Stevie, if they catch us, we will be killed, and he's like, yep. No, yep. There is no yep. You
Mhm.
don't know that. You
Well, he
explicitly
says
should know that that's
eventually.
not the case. What?
He says eventually. He says yes eventually.
But I still
Like
don't think
he
that's.
knows that it might not be right away, but he sees the path that they're going down, and
Oh,
he's like,
I
"There's no way you guys
okay.
don't become science experiments."
Maybe I misunderstood that.
That's what I interpreted it
I
as. I
thought
think.
it meant Lewis and Stevie knew that if they were seen, they'd be shot on sight. That's I misinterpreted it
Yeah.
potentially
No,
because
I think the way that I read the subtext in that scene was Cornelius is like, "Is there any way that we can regain a relationship with the humans?" And the scientist says, I
probably not.
wish you could, but no. And eventually, because we've already turned on you, because you've already established that we're not gonna let you have any kids and that we're going to do, mandatory surgery or whatever on you to prevent you from having more kids, like he's like, you're gonna become science experiments. There's no
Okay,
stopping this train.
I guess
And
that's
Cornelius
fair.
then asks for the gun.
Yeah.
So like for me, I think the subtext in the conversation is very clearly you will not make it out of another interaction with human beings. It might take a few years, but it's going to be a painful existence for you.
All right. Do you think it's in character for Zira to switch the babies?
Not in character with earlier in this same film, Zero, because she was too brave to be smart. And she very much like while she's holding fake Milo, she says that she's met hundreds since she's been here and she only trusts 3 humans. And like Armando, granted, is one of them, but
Mm-hmm.
like that's very sudden trust for someone to leave your whole child with.
Right.
Um, and but I feel like in the first film, maybe a little bit in the second film, she is someone who takes calculated risks. I think it makes sense for that Zero, which we've kind of gotten back to now that we're back to the original feel of the Planet of the Apes movies. I think it makes sense for that Zero to leave for good.
Okay. I wondered because on one hand she would never do that to a chimpanzee. On the other, maybe she's rationalized that these are just animals and she experiments on animals. Like she has a different
Mhm.
sensibility towards them. So I was just curious.
Well, and I think the fact that she like essentially drowns the baby, right? She like
Well, it
drops
was
him off
already
the other side
dead.
of
I
the
think
ship.
she got rid of it
Yeah,
partially, I think, to get rid of the evidence that it
maybe
wasn't
that.
the right
Yeah,
baby.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, yeah. In that case, not as much, but I feel like she definitely had kind of a bond with that baby and the circus chimp because she wanted to teach them. She wanted to help them. And I think she felt like she said something along the lines of like we understand each other at one
mhm,
point in the film. I think maybe it's the film just trying to make up a good reason why she would leave her baby, but I think that she as a character shows that she's actually kind of comfortable with this animalistic chimp rather than with the sentient humans.
mhm.
So, yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
cool. That's kind of where I'm at. I enjoy most of this film. I really do. This is the first time I really sat back and tried to look at it with more of a critical eye. And there's a lot I
Mhm.
don't think that holds up just because again of the potential of this movie where Cornelius and Zira have to try to stay silent the whole time and only the doctors know and they have to kind of like balance who they do and don't tell, what the reactions are later, is there a more
Mhm.
legitimate pushback? Like I don't know that I think there are 3 or 4 versions of this movie. I don't think this is a bad one, but I do not think
Mhm.
this is the best one that we could have got at all.
Sure.
So that's kind
I
of where
take
I'm
that.
at. I would say tis not a whale, tis maybe a dolphin, but what about you?
I did like it quite a bit, although you're making me rethink some things.
I'm
So
sorry.
maybe no conclusion,
No
just
conclusion. TBD.
TBD.
TBW. To be whale.
Or not to be whale. That is
That
the
is the
question.
question. I think that's where we're at.